Hello and welcome back to the course on Tableau. In today's tutorial, we will learn how to work with time series data. But first things first, let's go ahead and save our workbook. We've already connected the data source, and saving our workbook will prevent from loss of any progress that we make along the way in this section. So let's click Save As and give our workbook a name. In this case, it'll be section 3 for me. Click Save, and now it's saved. And all we have to do when we make changes is just press Ctrl S on the keyboard, and that will save our progress. Alright, so now we're trying to visualize time series data. Let's have a look at our data first and understand what we're working with. So if we right click on the data source, click View Data, you'll see that as we discussed, we've got age, gender, so 2 categories. Then we've got period, and we've got an unemployment value for each row. And that's exactly what we want to visualize. We want to see how unemployment is changing as period changes. So if we scroll down, we can see that we have many months. We've got a month for every single year, or we've got 12 months for every single year, and we can see how unemployment is changing. So we want to visualize that. So let's go ahead and do that. What we're going to do is we're just going to double click on unemployed, and then we're going to double click on period. And as you see how Tableau is very smart there, it's automatically put unemployed into rows, and it's summed it up, and it's put year or it's put period into columns, and it's taken the year of the period. So what's going on here is there's some aggregation, and we'll talk about aggregation more in the next tutorial, but it kind of makes sense already. What is happening is Tableau is taking all of the data that it can see, say for 2007, and it's summing it up, all of the values in all of the rows that have 2007 in them, irrespective of month, of gender, of age. Is just summing them up and coming up with one single value for 2007. Then the same thing for 2008, 2009, and so on. So that all makes sense, but now we've kind of got a bit of a question here. We know that our data is much more granular than that. We know that we have months in every year, and we have information for that. How do we get to that level of granularity? Well, let's go ahead and explore that. If we go to the drop down here, which you can see for this dimension, and we click it, you'll see that there's 2 sections which are responsible for time. There's this section which has year, quarter, month, day, and then there's this section which also has year, quarter, month, week number, and day. What's the difference between the two? Well, to find that out, let's click on month in the first section. And right away you can see how we no longer have years at the bottom. Instead of that, we have months. And what happened there? Well, the other thing that we can also see is that we have only 1 January and only 1 February and only 1 June. We know that in our data we have many Junes and many Februaries. We have one, in fact, we have one for every single year. But in this case, we're only presented with one of each month. So we only have 12 points on this chart. And what is going on? Well, what is happening is Tableau is taking all of the data from our data source, which has, let's say, for instance, May. For any row that has May in it, it will take it and aggregate it to this value. So it will add them up irrespective of age, gender, and even year. And for us, that doesn't make any sense. What's the point of adding up unemployment for 2005, 2006, 2007, and so on, and coming up with a number? That number has no meaning to us. And so why is that happening? Well, the reason is because in this case, Tableau is recognizing month as a dimension. And how can we tell that? Well, Tableau is giving us a hint. Up here, you can see that month of period is being highlighted in blue. So Tableau always highlights dimensions in blue and measures in green. And so that tells us that Tableau is recognizing this new variable, because in essence it is a new variable. Our variable in the data source is called period. We don't have a variable that is called month. But Tableau is creating a calculation here, and you can double click on it and see what the formula is. So Tableau is creating a calculation which is month of period, and in essence that's a new variable. And Tableau is recognizing this new variable as a dimension. And that means it will treat it just as it would treat age. Oh, sorry, just as it would treat gender, or in our case, age, because we have age groups. But let's think of it as in gender. So Tableau is treating this new variable as a categorical variable. It only has 12 categories, and it's putting the data into those categories. Well, obviously, in this case, we don't want that. We don't want different categories of months. We actually want a timeline over here at the bottom. So how do we get that? Well, instead of this month, let's go ahead and select the second month over here in this dropdown. And right away, you can see that our chart changed. And also you can see that now month of period is green. So this variable this time is being recognized as a measure. So if it were a calculated variable, it would be sitting over here. And what then happens now is that we have a timeline at the bottom, and we have all of the months with all of the data that we are looking for. And this is exactly what we wanted. So just to see the difference, let's click again, and we'll select year instead of month. So here you can see a similar chart to what we had before. So I'll just bring that one up. Here you can see very similar line, but here you've got categories of years. But if we click this year at the bottom here, then here you've got, instead of categories of years, you've got a timeline. And the only difference with the month timeline is that there's less dots on this timeline. And in fact, you can see the dots if you, in line, if you click on color and you select this option, you'll actually see the dots here. So you have less dots on this timeline. And all we're doing by changing this level here is we're changing the granularity of this specific timeline. So we're just saying we want more dots on the timeline. We're not changing the category that we're grouping our observations into. We're changing the granularity of our timeline, or the number of ticks on the timeline. And if we change month, there we go. So we're also, once again, we're changing the granularity of our timeline. So I'll just change this back to normal. And that's exactly what we want. So you have to be careful of that, and that's an important part of working with time series data, that you need to understand what you want from your time data, whether you want it to be a dimension or a category, or whether you want it to be a measure. In this case, we want it obviously to be a measure, so we can plot a timeline like this. And so that's pretty much it for today. But before we go, what I wanted to do is I wanted to show you how you can validate this chart. So this is unemployment data for the US, and obviously it's publicly available. So you can just go to Google and just look for unemployment. And 27 weeks is long-term unemployment. We're looking at long-term unemployment. 27 weeks, and then just type in FRED, and FRED stands for Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. So if you go here, you'll see a very similar chart, and whoop, here I can change it to 2005. So you can see that it looks a lot like our chart. The only question we've got, we can just look at the tip here and see 6,800, and in our chart it's 7,100, or 7,100,000. So it's, of course, you'll have a bit of a discrepancy if you have data from different data sources. In this case, it's about 300,000. But the way, like I look at it, if it's statistical data, so it's 300,000 and you divide it over 6,800. So that's less than 5% difference. And for what we're doing, for our purposes, that'll be a sufficient level of precision. And you can see that the charts are quite similar. So we are working with actual unemployment data in the US for this period of time. Okay, so that's us for today. And next time we will be talking about aggregation, granularity, and level of detail. So I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial. It will be a very important one. And until then, happy analyzing.